will be reduced to a civil judgment, and the charge will be reduced to vehicle tampering under Virginia Code 18.2-146 with an all suspended sentence, and the other terms shall, as seen fit by the court. If you fail to successfully complete the requirements during this one-year probationary
some testimony that you would like to present to the judge about the loss of Christine in your life.
I would.
Please go
Thank
ahead.
you. Again, my name is Danielle Hawker, and Christine Banfield is my younger sister. My family has publicly stayed silent since my sister's murder, except for a brief statement after the trial concluded. We chose to protect Christine and Valerie to prevent the media from contorting our words or create fodder for keyboard warriors. We were, however, not spared the media's attention. In the hours following Christine's murder, I received a call from a reporter masked in sympathy asking for a statement and pictures of Christine. Since then, my husband and I have received countless calls and emails, but they pale in comparison to the overwhelming volume my parents have endured. Christine does, however, deserve to be talked about by those that loved her. Grief is not something that is done on display or shared, except those closest to you, and even then, it is more often hides behind closed doors in quiet moments. Internally, I feel like a different person, like my identity has shifted in an unimaginable way. Part of who I was, who I still am, is a big sister. And in what seemed like seconds, it was taken from me, taken from us. While justice was served, it does not lift the grief or make more space for it. It will never bring Joseph Ryan back to his loved ones or Christine back to our family. In the 3 years since Christine's death, some days I feel like I'm living with a ticking time bomb waiting for it to explode. Fear and anxiety taking over, my mind telling my body that something else terrible is going to happen. I waited for answers, for more information. I was in a perpetual state of limbo. The daily messages I would receive with pictures of Valerie stopped and were replaced with calls from reporters wanting the next headline. The text Christine and I exchanged stopped. The evening call I would randomly get while she was driving home from work would never happen again. The trip I had booked to celebrate Valerie's 5th birthday the following month would not happen. Life as I knew it ended, yet I remained guilty for living and left without the one person who should have known me the longest, gone. When we were little, Christine and I would often get mistaken for twins. We were nearly 4 years apart, my baby sister, or my sissy, as I like to call her. We both had curly hair, but otherwise, I didn't understand what other people saw. When I look into a mirror, I sometimes see her first, my face replaced by hers, and in a flash, she's gone, and I'm left confused by my own reflection. She was her own person, never trying to be me, but always wanted to be by my side, and I hers. I don't remember much of my life before she was born. I have only a handful of memories that are more like looking at a picture. I do have a vivid memory of going to the baby doctor with my mom and Grammy, our maternal grandmother, who we also called Grammy Bird. Grammy would keep me entertained by walking around outside and picking flowers. During one appointment, I was stung by a bee and became upset, wanting my mom. Grammy brought me inside, where a baby monitor showed a dark, blurry image I couldn't understand. As she held me, my mom pointed to it and said it was the baby. At just about 4 years old, the same age as Valerie was when Christine was killed, I was excited to be a big sister. Once she was born, I became we. I haven't stopped saying we when I speak about my childhood after her death, except now when I do, it takes my breath away, a pause filled with love that has nowhere to go. We were each other's first friends, sleeping in each other's bedrooms, in sleeping bags on the floor or in tents in the den. I climbed in her crib several times and attempted a solo diaper change unsuccessfully. Our best friends were sisters. We would stay up late on Saturday nights, waiting for our dad to come home from his 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. shift, watch Saturday Night Live, and eat hot bagels he picked up on his way home. Our favorite show was Full House, and we would get in giggle fits at our grandparents' house for no reason. She would fall asleep anywhere, like a New Kids on the Block concert, or in a short car ride telling me to wake me up when we be there. She was obsessed with the Backstreet Boys, specifically Kevin from the Backstreet Boys. She loved them so much, she and her best friend camped outside a Rite Aid while the moms took turns sleeping in the car in a parking lot. This was the 90s. There was no internet, only a Ticketmaster at a drugstore. She loved Brad Pitt, Legends of the Fall Brad Pitt, so much that if she had a boy, I was sure she would name him Tristan. Our childhood was spent at home, in our basement playroom. At friends' houses, we would call on our corded landline to see if they could come out and play. On family vacations, at our grandparents' houses in their pool, fishing on our dad or our grandfather's boats, crabbing off a dock with Grabby Bird, eating Entenmann's cakes and drinking coffee out of tiny cups at Lala Grandma and Grandpa's house, our paternal grandparents. We got our first haircuts from our paternal grandfather, a professional barber in our backyard, and he would give us Charms lollipops from his in-home barbershop and shove $5 in our hands as we left. We didn't have internet until high school and cell phones until college. We played outside catching tiny frogs, lightning bugs in jars, and used our imaginations to find fun anywhere. We had family traditions that mostly revolved around food, Italian food to be specific. In our house, we ate macaroni, not pasta, and sauce, not gravy. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners, and countless big and small events were spent with our aunts and uncles. Our grandparents were a large part of our upbringing as they were ever present in our lives. Grammy Bird passed away in September of 2022, just 5 months before Christine. Our family was still grieving her loss when Christine died. Even though we may have looked similar, we each had our own distinct personalities. She was kind and caring and precocious as a little girl, thoughtful and wise beyond her years. It was no surprise when she said she wanted to be a nurse at a young age. Her warmth only grew as she got older. She had a way about her that made people feel comfortable and welcomed without effort. New people scared me, and I was awkward in social situations. She loved being around friends, and large groups didn't intimidate her like they did me. She was a resident advisor in college, always looking for ways to help others. She was reliable and selfless and would give up her own time to help a friend in need. After she finished college, we found ourselves living in our childhood home again. It felt a little like we were kids again, but without the sleeping bags. It didn't last long as she started her first nursing job and wanting her independence. She lived her life at her own pace, and I didn't question her decisions unless she asked for guidance. I listened and asked questions so I could better understand what she needed before offering any advice. The memories we shared growing up helped shape my sense of love, family, and who I am. They felt simple and whole, filled with laughter, safety, and love. Since losing her, those same memories have changed. They are no longer just joyful, but layered with grief, each one a reminder of both how much I had and how much was taken. Christine was married the year before my husband Joe and I. I look back on this day with a heavy mix of emotions. I was so happy for her about to start her journey to becoming a family. That feeling is hard to hold onto now because it still feels like a happy memory, but mixed with a deep sadness. What rushes in now is the realization that we will never experience milestone events again. No birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmases, family vacations, family traditions, no new memories to form. Our family will still celebrate, but there is a missing piece, an emptiness that fills the room. The weight of that feeling makes it hard to move through the day, like walking through water fully clothed. When Christine found out she was pregnant with Valerie, she was living in New York. Joe and I were living in New Hampshire. She mailed me a card that said, "I miss the crap out of you." It made me giggle, and when I opened it, there was a sonogram picture that immediately made me think of her on that baby monitor. I was so excited for her. Deep inside, I was sad for myself and my husband. Just the day before, I'd had an invasive test after several years of infertility, which led to more questions than answers. I never told Christine about that procedure, and I regret not leaning on her for support. 3 months after Christine's death, I was in the hospital recovering from surgery, finally getting answers. She should have been there holding my hand and reassuring me that I would be okay after a nearly 8-hour procedure complicated by the von Willebrand's disease, the bleeding disorder that we shared. Less than a year later, I faced another major surgery. I was terrified, not just of the procedure, but of the possibility of leaving my family behind after losing Christine. What remained was an ambiguous grief layered on top of an already soul-crushing loss. I try not to dwell on the support she might have given me. The imagined conversations I have with her offer little comfort. The day Christine was murdered lives in my head on repeat, starting with the early morning text Joe received from my father, in all caps, "Call me now," to collapsing on the floor after grabbing the phone and hearing the words from my father that Christine was stabbed and had been killed is mixed with my own screams, the two forever intertwined. My parents were going over a bridge on their way to Virginia for an overnight stay with Christine when they received the devastating news. I was full of anxiety about them driving after receiving this horrific news. The plan Brendan carried out with Juliana needed unknowing participation from my parents to be sure that they would be home, or that she would be home from work. They would still have several more hours to drive while informing family of Christine's murder, hearing shock and expressions of grief repeatedly. No parent should have to make that phone call, but they did it again and again. This is the burden of a parent that loses a child. Watching the immediate news coverage set off countless imagined scenarios. Somehow I found myself reliving something I had never experienced as if I had been there. I envisioned Christine's fear, felt her terror, and wished I was there to take her place. I no longer had a sister. I was no longer a sister. I said this on the phone with an old friend that day, and she told me that even though she was gone, we would always be sisters, and we cried. I flew to Virginia the next day. My parents picked me and my aunt, who had flown on from New York, up at the airport. They were quiet, moved slowly, and I could see the heaviness of the loss pushing them down as they tried to hold the weight of the pain my sister endured in the last moments of her life. I knew I had to be strong. I had to hold back tears not to upset them further. One day, Joe and I will be entrusted with caring for my parents as they grow older, and we will meet that responsibility with love. But no matter how much we give, it will never feel whole. That role was meant to be shared with my sister, together as daughters, making decisions, supporting one another, and walking through this stage of life as a family. Unknowing participation would be the cornerstone of Brendan's plan. He used friends and family to continue his affair with Juliana and formulate his plan. He used his own daughter as a part of his plan to bring her into the house to kill her mother. He lured an unknowing participant, Joseph Ryan, to his death. Based on the accounts from Joseph Ryan's loved ones, he had a kind soul, put others' needs before his own, and would have tried to protect my sister from harm, not cause any. During the course of the trial, I learned that on October 29th, 2022, Brendan and Juliana went to a gun range. That same day, I, along with our mom and aunt, visited for Halloween. We spent the day at various Halloween events in the area with Christine and Valerie, while Brendan and Juliana perfected this part of their plan. When I learned this, I went numb. I felt as though I had in some way been used to facilitate what happened simply because I didn't recognize the signs. Since then, I have replayed countless moments, fixating on small details and convincing myself that I should have noticed something, that there must have been a clue that I missed. Looking back with information I did not have at the time distorts what I actually experienced, yet the emotional weight of the guilt still feels real. The shame runs deep, and it has caused me to question my own judgment and perception. even though I understand that I was evaluating incomplete and concealed information. Guilt is meant to be tied to a choice, and I did not choose harm. Despite this understanding, I continue to struggle with the feeling of being drawn into something I never knowingly participated in. I know rationally that these feelings are misplaced, but I do not yet know how long it will take to fully reconcile them with what was done to my family and the way that I was implicated in it. I didn't truly know Brendan at all. I don't believe anyone did, not family, not friends, and certainly not Christine. His testimony was the most self-serving display of narcissism I have ever witnessed. He attempted to smear her through outright lies and victim blaming, accusing her of betraying the oath she took as a nurse, an accusation that not only attacked her integrity, but further wronged the vulnerable patients in her care. As Christine's sister, I didn't just lose her. I had to sit and listen to a version of her that did not exist. I knew her in a way that he never could. I knew her honesty, her compassion, her refusal to live with secrets. Hearing him attempt to rewrite her life and her character felt like losing her all over again, piece by piece, in a room where she could not defend herself. His lies did not just attempt to destroy her reputation, they forced me to relive my grief with anger and helplessness I cannot fully describe. He was the one that had countless affairs, several attempts at finding the right mistress that would eventually help carry out the plan with him, because the absurd line of questioning about a plan didn't just develop when he started his affair with Juliana. I believe she meant no more to him than anyone else in his life. She was just another person to control and exploit. What he presented as affection was manipulation. What may have appeared as love was nothing more than strategy. If there had been any genuine intent to build a life with Juliana, he could have chosen a lawful and honest path. He could have divorced and moved on. But divorce would have required relinquishing control, and control was always the priority. His actions were not driven by love, but a desire for power, deception, and a complete disregard for the lives he destroyed. The callous way he spoke about Christine will one day be heard and seen by Valerie. She will eventually come to terms with the fact that her father, the person who was meant to protect her above all else, used her and put her directly in harm's way. Valerie may hold only a faint memory of a life untouched by loss, but for most of her years, she will know her mother through grief and the stories of others share with her. We will do everything we can to fill those stories with light, so she comes to know her mother through joy and through joy and love, not only through the weight of what was taken from her. Christine's last words and thoughts had to be about Valerie. If she had done enough in the short time that she had with her, worry about who would care for her, not apologizing to Brendan and making sure he knew how loved he was. Christine chose to dedicate her nursing career to caring for the most vulnerable, to babies and children during their most difficult moments. She provided comfort to frightened parents who wish they could take their children's place. She made those moments more bearable with her big smile and infectious laugh. I can still hear her laugh in my head. Christine dedicated herself to her daughter, who will grieve her loss at every milestone in her life. I will be there, never to replace my sister, but to tell Valerie who her mother was, remind her of her big laugh and even bigger heart. I will tell Valerie how much she was loved by her mother, and I will forever carry both the grief of losing her too soon and the gratitude of having loved her for 37 years and being loved by her in return. That bond will not end because we will always be sisters. I want to thank the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for their commitment to pursuing justice, to the members of the jury for their time, care, and responsibility they took in reaching their verdict, to the Fairfax County Police Department for their dedication to seeking the truth and for honoring my sister and Joseph Ryan's life through your work. To the Victim Services team for their compassion, care, and support they have shown my family, going above and beyond for us during an unimaginable time. And thank you, Your Honor, for your commitment to fairness throughout this trial, for your patience today, and for allowing me this opportunity to share a small glimpse of who Christine was, what she meant to me and my family, and how her loss has profoundly shaped and will continue to shape my life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please answer any questions that Mr. Carroll may have.
Any cross-examination?
No, Your
All
Honor.
right, ma'am, you can have a seat. Thank you. All right, your next witness.
Judge, the next witness is going to be Deirdre Fisher, who is appearing virtually.
All right, ma'am, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, could you please state your name for the record in the court
My name is Deirdre Maureen Fisher.
and your relationship to Joseph Ryan?
I was Joseph Ryan's mother.
And do you have a statement that you would like to read describing the impact of Joe's loss in your life?
I would, yes, thank you.
Please go ahead.
First, I'd like to say, I wish I could be present in court today, but for medical reasons, I have been unable to attend the trial. But in my stead, my sister Grace Fisher Littner is here and has been for the whole trial. And my cousin, Jan Gillis. So I thank them both for being here, for Joe and for myself. And I'd like to thank the Honorable Judge Penny S. Ascaritis and this courtroom for allowing me to give a victim statement today for my beloved son, Joseph Nathan Ryan. I would like to speak about the impact of losing Joe, his brutal murder, the trial, that the murder and cruel, false claim that Joe himself was a murderer. Most importantly, I want to speak about the type of man Joe was. When I had Joe, I was just 16. I did not have financial, legal, or physical ability to raise my son. Despite being discounted as his mother, I fought for the right to see him and prevailed as a loving part of his life. Joe became old enough by the age of 14 to pursue a closer relationship with me. He told me at one point I was the reason he learned how to love unconditionally. I spent holidays and vacations with Joe. He called me often. Our closeness spanned the rest of his lifetime. I was the last person he called the night before he was brutally murdered. He sent me a photo of himself that night. It was the last time I got to hear the word mom. I got a call about his murder 2 days after it occurred. As in life, in death, Joe was taken from me over and over again. The lead detective explained he had not been told I was Joe's mother. He was compassionate, and I would go on to include me, as he did, and the defense team in updates about the murder investigation and legal process. When he gave me the horrible news that my baby had been murdered, taken from me again, I let out a primal scream. I cried. From that night on, I have felt the deepest loss I could ever experience. My only child was gone, but the nightmares and pain were only just the beginning. Over these more than 3 years since Joe's murder, my life has been filled with continued loss and with emotional and medical and financial trauma. I have not been able to function normally. I have navigated a barrage of emergency room calls, doctor's appointments and hospital stays, and surgeries. I have spent a great deal of time not able to function or care for myself at home. A direct result of the murder and devastating trial that ensued. I developed a heart condition and ulcers. Just last month, well, it would be a few more now, I had my toe amputated after not being able to fully grasp the pain that I needed to seek prompt medical care. That also means the medical bills piled up again, and working became nearly impossible. Would I have experienced such severe trauma without the brutal loss of Joe? Certainly not. When Joe was alive, he would fly or drive to care for me. And when I needed, and it included cancer twice, he was there. That brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. Who Joe really was. Brandon Banfield, his defense team, even some of the press carelessly characterized Joe as the intruder. The fetish guy into rough sex. The rapist and the murderer. Or simply the other forgettable guy. Not even showing Joe's face during the murder trial. Joe was chosen because Brendan Banfield thought he would make a good dupe to be framed for the planned murder of his wife. As with so many other things, Brendan was wrong. In some ways, my son was flawed, regular Joe, but he also had some amazing qualities. Joe was extremely caring. He lived with his grandmother and was dedicated to her health and her well-being. He moved to Florida to care for his parental grandfather, Pap, before he died from advanced dementia. He went for 2 months to care for a woman he loved who had radical hysterectomy, also taking care of her young daughter. That's part of who Joe was. Joe was a guy who believed in fighting for the underdog and even actual neglected dogs. He would walk into an animal shelter and ask for the oldest, ugliest dogs. Bring them home and love them for years. When Joe was murdered, he left behind a dog named Kitty, who waited for him at the top of the stairs. Joe also did things like gardening, feeding stray cats, teaching autistic kids to do jujitsu, and working at a homeless shelter. He believed that those with less should be fairly treated and supported, that Black and brown people should not be marginalized. Joe also was a feminist. He spoke out about the mistreatment of women during the start of the Me Too movement. Although he was chosen as a scapegoat from a website that is considered fetish, he was on that site to find a consenting partner because he believed in a woman's right to bodily autonomy and in her control over her romantic and sexual life. Joe wasn't just the disposable caricature he was made out to be. He had a face, he had a name, he had a life. But Brendan Banfield shot his face, soiled his name, and treated his life as disposable. My son was a kind human being who had a full life of meaning. In contrast, Brendan will remain known as an abusive father, the brutal murderer of his dedicated and compassionate, beautiful wife, and a narcissistic killer of an innocent man. My son's legacy is one of selfless love, while Brandon's is one of senseless evil. I have never directly spoken to Brendan, and I won't today. To me, he's nothing more than what I just said. But Joe, yes, Joe, was someone to me. He was my baby boy, my biggest supporter, and the man I think was pretty special and never forgettable. Thank you so much for letting me say this out loud and share some of my love for Joe and the loss I felt I will always feel. He was part of me, and I will never get that back. But I will choose to live in his fighting spirit and with his voice in my head. Be kind to yourself, Mom. Take better care of yourself, Mom. Love you, Mom. I won't forget you, Joe. I hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please answer any questions of Mr. Carroll.
Any cross-examination? All right. No cross-examination. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Your next witness?
Thank you.
Judge, the next witness that I have is Sangeeta Ryan.
All right.
You swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this case that our policy is valid? Yes.
Good morning.
Hi, my name is Sangeeta Ryan, and I am the aunt of the young man I met as a preschooler with a giant backpack and a tiny pink purse who was called Joey Nathan Ryan.
And do you have some testimony to share about what the loss of Joe has meant to your family?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Hello, Honorable Judge Ascarati, members of the Fairfax County team, members of the gallery, our family, Christine's family, friends, and members of the press. We are Joe's family. We're the people he loved, and we loved him. With the exception of speaking once at Ms. Perez Magalier's sentencing, we have remained silent since this tragedy devastated our family 3 years ago. Judge, we thank you for listening to our words back in February. We chose silence out of respect for law enforcement, for the Commonwealth, and for Christine's family, whose loss is beyond imagination. Christine was taken by the very person she trusted to build a life with and raise a child with. We also remained silent because Joe and Christine were not only taken from us on February 24th, 2023, but were repeatedly disrespected by the defendant's calculated lies. Let me be absolutely clear. This was not a moment of weakness, confusion, or loss of control. This was a deliberate, planned act carried out by someone who believed he could outsmart the system and escape accountability. And even after taking 2 lives, the defendant continued lying to investigators, lying to the court here, lying to his child and her family, and attempting to manipulate anyone who would listen. What we witnessed was not remorse. It was arrogance. It was a sustained effort to rewrite reality in order to protect himself. That matters because it shows exactly who he is. He didn't just take Joe and Christine from us. He tried to erase the truth of who they were, and in doing so, inflicted further harm on the people who loved them. This crime did not just take Joe's life. It took his place in the world. It took a son, a grandson, a brother, a cousin, a friend, a caregiver. He took my nephew, Joe, on purpose and left devastation. Every day we see the impact of that loss. Joe's grandmother, Connie, who raised him from the time he was just days old, now lives with a grief that has only deepened in time. She was there for every milestone of his life, his childhood, his school years, his prom, his first car, his growth into adulthood. And in return, as Deirdre said, Joe was there for her. He built his life around caring for his grandparents and making sure they were never alone. Since his passing, her health has declined. She's not here today. The absence of Joe is not abstract. It is constant, visible, and devastating. Joe was a kind and loving person. He was funny. He believed in the goodness of others. He was a friend, a caretaker, and someone who brought light into the lives of those around him. He is deeply loved. He's remembered. He mattered, and he still does. The only solace we hold on to is this: love endures. It lives in the stories we tell, in the way we carry Joe with us, and in how we choose to live our lives moving forward. Today we speak, and today we find our voices, and today our silence ends. We will spend our days and our lives saying Joe's name. We will carry forward his kindness, his goofiness, his love, and his spirit. His absence will always be felt. His chair will remain empty at our gatherings, but his presence will never truly leave us. We do not forgive. This wasn't an accident. This was a calculated decision followed by a deliberate and ongoing attempt to evade responsibility and distort the truth. Today, we take back Joe and Christine's memory from the lies, from the manipulation, and from the man who thought he could control their story even after taking their lives. He no longer controls anything. We leave here with our heads high, not in silence, but with purpose. We will honor Joe and Christine by living with the same kindness and love that they gave so freely. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be Joe's voice and Christine's voice. And thank you for the service, your service to the community, Judge Asgarati, as you approach your retirement. May we all find a way to love more deeply and bring more kindness into the world. Thank you from the Ryan family.
Thank you. Please answer any questions, Mr. Carroll.
No cross-examination.
All right, and you can have a seat.
Thank you.
All right. Your next witness?
That was my last witness.
All
Judge.
right, Commonwealth's evidence. Does the defense have any evidence?
No, Your Honor.
All right, argument?
Yes, ma'am. Judge, I want to be clear what we're asking for today before I begin the meat of my argument. We're asking for a life sentence to serve in FE 2024-666 count 1. As we know, the imposition of 2 life sentences is not available given the 2 parts of the statute that we are working with. So I want to be clear that that is what we're asking the court to go forward on and why. And I'm also asking the court to obviously impose the 3 years that is required by count 5 in that same case number. And in FE 2024-873 count 1, I'm asking you to sentence him to 5 years and not suspend any of that. Judge, Brendan Banfield planned and carried out the executions of 2 innocent victims, his wife Christine and Joe Ryan, a stranger to him. He planned their murders over several months, enlisting the help of his co-defendant and affair partner, Juliana Perez Magalhaes. He planned ruthless and brutal killings, shooting Joe in the head, stabbing Christine in the neck over and over again, and instructing Juliana to shoot Joe a second time. He manipulated the crime scene and lied about the circumstances of their deaths, painting Joe as a violent intruder when he had hand-selected Joe as his second victim, posing as Christine online looking for someone with whom to act out a rape fantasy outside of her marriage. And neither version is at all close to the truth. They are lies. Christine was a daughter, a sister, a mother, a nurse, and a friend. Her parents, her sister, her coworkers, and friends told you about Christine and how much she matters to them in their lives. Joe was a son, a brother, a grandson, an uncle, a cousin, and a devoted animal lover. His mom, Deirdre, and his Ryan family members told you how much he matters to them in their lives. These families won't be able to celebrate obvious, joyous milestones like graduations, weddings, holiday celebrations with Christine and Joe. It's important for us to remember the intangible moments that these families have lost as well. Christine was murdered before her daughter started kindergarten. Christine is never going to take a first day of school picture with her daughter. She's never going to attend field day or chaperone a field trip. Christine will never know what activities her daughter loves. Will she play soccer? Be on a summer swim team? Will she play an instrument? Be a theater kid? Will she be an artist? Christine won't be here to know any of that. Christine won't be here to offer her daughter opportunities to help her find what she loves. And Valerie won't have her mother's guidance and love as she navigates the question of who she is. Joe is loved and cherished by his family, and they endured a false narrative portraying Joe to be a violent criminal. He was a loving caretaker in his family. He cared for his grandpa, his grandma, and his mom, uprooting himself selflessly to be closer to them as they needed him. He loved and cared for neglected and abused animals. He was single when he was murdered. He won't get married. He won't become a father. He won't create his own family, and he won't create any new memories with the family he has here today. Banfield and his co-defendant are the causes of the immeasurable loss suffered by Christine and Joe's families. There is nothing that can lessen their devastation. Nothing we can do or say will bring Joe and Christine back to their families. This sentencing ends the in-court process, but it is not an end to anyone's grief. For all of these reasons, I am asking you to impose every minute of active incarceration that the law requires and that the law allows. The sun should never shine on Mr. Banfield's skin as a free man again.
Thank you, Mr. Chrisley. Argument, Mr. Carroll?
Your Honor, there's recognition on the part of the defense that the jury verdict leaves very little room for discretion, but there are some areas that I would like to argue with relating to the Commonwealth's argument as well as the narrative that's been presented. The Commonwealth pursued a theory of catfishing for years, Judge, while having the answers within their grasp with the digital forensics examiner. Behind the scenes, police officers were trying to change the expert opinion, and Detective Miller, to his credit, resisted. In fact, this executive summary that he testified to remained the same except for one new fact: the changed testimony of the co-defendant. Commonwealth made a significant effort to diminish the role that digital forensics plays in these and the other investigations. They never called their witness for the Commonwealth's case, and the strategy paid off because the jury saw this as credibility determination between the co-defendant and my client. That was a much easier question for them to answer instead of the difficulties of parsing through the digital evidence and other scientific evidence. By making it about credibility, there was no need to resolve such questions such as, if the co-defendant did not know how to log into the suspect accounts, who accessed Christine Banfield's laptop on at least 10 occasions when Brendan Banfield was nowhere near the home or the device in question? Second question, how did Christine Banfield not discover the two-factor authentication on her personal cell phone that the co-defendant testified that she secured surreptitiously from Christine Banfield and then put it back? And finally, with regard to digital forensics, how was this plan, according to the co-defendant, executed on February 23rd, the night before the murder, with Christine's laptop, while within minutes Christine was accessing her work and also shopping? Those questions remain, Judge, and those were incumbent upon the jury to resolve. With regard to the bloodstain pattern analysis, by making the credibility of the co-defendant versus Brendan the issue, there was no need to resolve questions such as, why did Joe Ryan have an injury to his hand that would have held the knife? This was corroborated by the medical examiner. Why was Joe Ryan's DNA found under Christine Banfield's fingernails? Why was Brendan Banfield's DNA not present in any of the certificates of analysis of relevance, and why were there no fingerprints of Brendan Banfield? With clear evidence that Joe Ryan supplied the knife, why was it not considered that Joe's DNA was at the juncture of the blade of the knife and the handle, and that Brendan Banfield's was not present on that item? Why was it not considered that Joe Ryan hit Brendan on his back after being shot, and the blood analysis shows it was Christine Banfield's blood, indicative of Christine bleeding at the hands of Joe Ryan? And ultimately, Judge, why did we not hear from the Fairfax PD regarding who Joe Ryan was, or other officers in terms of the Commonwealth's case? The co-defendant, even in her testimony and numerous times before that, indicated that she never saw Brendan touch Joe Ryan's body. Your Honor, the jury has spoken, and we must live with the finding, and my client is prepared to be sentenced while these and many other questions remain. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kerr. All right, Mr. Banfield, if you could stand, sir. Sir, is there anything you wish to say at this time before sentence is imposed?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm greatly disappointed in the legal system. The system has failed not only me, but also Christine, my daughter Valerie, the Bensons, and the rest of my family. I was found guilty of a crime that I did not commit, but it's actually impossible to have committed the crime, as the prosecution, their experts, and their witnesses have presented. The prosecution and their witnesses' statements do not match the evidence. My rights to defend my family has been taken away, to defend my home and myself. This is a protected right that I'm sure everyone listening here knows they have. My right has been discarded. I'm being sentenced on an impossible set of circumstances. The prosecution's catfish theory was forced on detectives. Detectives did not agree with the catfish theory and were harassed, belittled, and then transferred out of their department unwillingly. 3 different digital forensic experts agreed there was no catfish. This includes Fairfax Detective Miller, their expert. This is a quote from his report. The event spanned over a 46-day period from 1/9/23 to 2/24/23. There's no indication that Christine lost control of her devices during that time. Christine is also active with these related specificialities to her during and around the relevant times. Christine also has a pattern of being active on her devices during the relevant times over the year leading up to the period. This will include consistent email and browser activity between the hours of 2300 and 100 hours. Although the not detailed, sorry. Detective Miller's report was sent for independent review to the University of Alabama for peer review. This is a best practice declared for digital forensics. Holly Kennedy of the University of Alabama agreed with Detective Miller's process and finding that there was no loss of device, no loss of dominion and control during this time. When Juliana was questioned about the details of the case, she was unable to verify or remember the information. Juliana did not know the password to Christine's phone, the laptop, the email account, the Telegram, or the FetLife accounts. She did not even know the name of the email account. How could she have accessed it without any of that information? Juliana claimed that she wrote messages but could not identify a single message that she wrote. Juliana said that the Gmail was created on the laptop when it was created on the phone, then said that I deleted the two-factor authentication, which was never deleted, never hidden, was still there. The Telegram application was also not hidden, always available on Christine's laptop. It was never uninstalled and reinstalled and was always available. When Juliana was questioned about the email account, this is her quote: "I was not the one logging in. It was Brendan who accessed the email." The question was then restated and resent and said again, and this is her second quote: "I was not the one logging in." The email account was accessed approximately 10 times while I was not home. This includes when I was in Maryland at FLETC, a secure government facility that required an appointment and ID verification to enter. If Juliana did not enter these email accounts, but they were still logged in, there's only one other person that could access these accounts, and that is Christine. There are also 2 instances where neither Juliana or I were home with the logins. This includes the morning of 2/24, when I had left for work and was seen on video at McDonald's, and Juliana had left the house. Her movements were tracked and verified by GPS. Her phone logged that she was parked in the cul-de-sac, and her Apple Watch had logged her steps leaving the home. And by her own testimony, she also stated that she had left the home. Yet after that, the laptop was then logged in and accessed again. There is no dispute that Joe Ryan brought the knife to my home. My DNA and fingerprints are not on the knife. Joe Ryan's DNA is on the knife, right at the junction of the handle and the blade. The DNA is right where you would expect it to be for someone who is forcefully using the knife. This is further verified by the injury that is on Joe's thumb in his hand. The medical examiner verified the injury on Joe's thumb. Could be caused by the knife. There are no injuries to my hands, nothing to indicate I ever held the knife. Joe's DNA is also under Joe Ryan's fingernails. Joe's DNA is also under Christine's fingernails, indicating that she tried to fight him off. Joe Ryan's hands have a mixture of Joe's and Christine's DNA. When he got back up and struck me in the back, it was transferred to the back of my jacket. Juliana's original statement on 2/24 stated that I never touched Joe. She repeated this both again in both of her proffers and at trial. The prosecution has repeatedly said that I manipulated the scene and moved Joe Ryan. I never left Christine's side. I only tried to render aid to her. Juliana said that I poured blood on Joe. This does not match the findings of the medical examiner or the blood spatter expert, who described that these were transfers and were not as droplets. Christine obtained tickets to the zoo and sent them to Juliana. There was no prompting for this. Christine wrote the zoo on the calendar and in Juliana's schedule. Only Christine could have planned the meeting on 2/24. The meeting of Christine and Joe was confirmed over a week prior, but only Christine could have chosen 2/24 because she was scheduled to work. No one else would know that this day would be available. On 2/24, she had only requested off from work on February 23rd and had not informed anybody else that she was off until then. The Fairfax County Police Department never truly looked into Joe Ryan. No search warrant was ever conducted at Joe's residence. Only 2 women were interviewed about their relationship with Joe, and both found that they were very uncomfortable with him. Both chose not to see him again. One was so uncomfortable that she went to her therapist the next day. These are her quotes. She felt so out of place, and that it was dirty, and that he was uncomfortable towards her. I believe only one of Joe's friends was also interviewed. He stated that in a confrontation, Joe would choke or strangle somebody. This matches Joe's social media profile, saying that he studied neck snapping at Harvard. And to add to that, where was Christine stabbed? In the neck, which Joe seems to have a fondness for. These things are some of quotes from other people, not from me. Joe had previously also cut another woman. It's in his own messages, in his own words, that he was attracted to that. Separately, there's entire internal affairs videos about this case. So either Detective Bryant or Lieutenant Giacchio is lying based on what they said at trial, because Lieutenant Giacchio denied saying that Juliana was arrested as an innocent. Meanwhile, Detective Bryant said that was brought up to him by Giacchio in his internal affairs video. Both of them are under oath. So one of them would be committing a Giglio violation. Also, Detective Nielsen stated that Juliana was arrested to get her to flip, and there was no other reason provided. Christine was a wonderful and loving person. Just as you heard from many of the people here, she was a loving and compassionate nurse. During COVID, she volunteered to take care of many of the people that were sick and struggling. She signed up for extra shifts. She signed up for vaccination clinics. She cared for her daughter. She enrolled her in dance lessons. She was there for recitals. I loved her very much, despite what you may think of my affairs. Our marriage worked for us. It wasn't something that I looked to end. It was told to other women that I was never going to leave Christine. That was always how it was said. Christine cared very much for her family and friends. I'm not trying to diminish in any way what her life was. She truly was a caring mother, a caring wife, a loving nurse. But I am not responsible for her death. This is not a knife that I ever held in my hand, and I never stabbed her. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Banfield, a jury of your peers, after hearing all the evidence, has found you guilty of count 1 of the indictment 2024-666, aggravated murder of 2 people in the same act or transaction. They found you guilty of count 4 of 2024-666, aggravated murder of 2 people within a 3-year period, count 5 of 2024-666, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, and count 1 of 2024-873, child endangerment. In accordance with Virginia law, although you have been found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated murder, the court can only sentence you on 1 count of aggravated murder, which will be count 1 of 2024-666. The statute requires a sentence of life imprisonment on this count, which is now the highest penalty one can receive in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This exact statute was our capital murder statute until Virginia abolished capital punishment in 2021. You should understand you were found guilty of crimes that 5 short years ago would have carried a sentence of death. That reflects the severity of your crimes and your actions. Life in prison is a punishment reserved for a very small number of individuals, those whom the community has determined should never walk free again. It is a harsh sentence, but in this case, it is a justified one. In the 18 years I've been on the bench, I have seen hundreds of defendants appear before me, and I have had the arduous task of sentencing these individuals. In the vast majority of these cases, people made mistakes, were struggling with substance use disorders, or acting in anger, choosing violence in a moment that changed everything. They were not inherently bad people, but they made terrible decisions and suffered the consequences. Sentencing in those cases is difficult. It weighs on me, often long after the hearing is over. Only 2 times prior to today have I encountered something different in my courtroom. 2 individuals that carried no remorse, calculated, and planned their violent crimes and left many victims and devastation in their path. As I listen to the evidence in this case and listen to your testimony, it is apparent that I am once again looking at that same kind of evil. The disregard of the life of your wife, someone you supposedly loved, is almost unfathomable. Scheming for months, a master plan involving so many moving parts, including deception and manipulation, luring a completely innocent man into your deadly trap, continuing on after the murders without a care, and not once thinking of the impact on Christine's daughter, the unspoken tragic victim of your behavior. You did not just take her mother from her, you placed her in the middle of the horror you created. She is young now, but one day she will understand your true self, and she will understand what you took from her, which is everything. The loss of her mother, who will never be a part of her life as she grows, the loss of her family, and the security she lived under. All of this is lost based on your calculated and selfish behavior. It is impossible to comprehend what Joseph Ryan experienced, seeing you enter the room, being shot in the head, blinded, hearing you instruct the co-defendant to shoot him again. And Christine, to imagine her final thoughts as she initially thought you were there to save her from what she thought was a brutal attack. And then to see you over her stabbing her again and again with a knife in her neck. Her final realization that this was all you're doing. And in her final moments thinking of her daughter. The sentence I impose today reflects not only the law, but the judgment of the community. The jury did not find you credible on the stand. To testify as you did shows the court that you still think that you are the smartest person in the room. One would hope that someday you will become tortured by what you have done to Christine, Joe, Christine's daughter, and their families, but nothing I have seen suggests that you will. The level of cruelty, calculation, and inhumanity in this case reflects something far deeper than anger or impulse. It reflects evil, which is why I carry no burden and find no hesitation in sentencing you to life. On count 1 of 2024-666 aggravated murder, I sentence you to life in the penitentiary for the rest of your natural life without the possibility of parole, without good conduct allowances or any earned sentence credits or conditional release. On count 5 of 2024-666, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, I sentence you to 3 years in the penitentiary, which is a mandatory term and cannot be suspended. Since it is required by statute, an additional 6 months is ordered and suspended for post-release probation, which is a nullity in this case, but is required to be part of the sentence. On count 1 of 2024-873, child endangerment, I sentence you to 5 years in the penitentiary. Since it is required by statute, an additional 6 months is ordered and suspended for post-release probation, which is again a nullity in this case, but is required to be part of the sentence. Each of these sentences are consecutive, that is one after the other. And since you've been convicted of a felony in Virginia, a sample of your DNA will be taken and submitted to the Virginia State Police database. That is the sentence of the court. Are there any questions, Mr. Carroll? Any questions?
No, Your Honor, but the Commonwealth does have one additional request, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
The Commonwealth is asking that a condition of the sentence be that the defendant have no contact with his daughter, Valerie. This is at the request of her guardian ad litem, her therapist, and her
I
counsel.
understand, but I'm not doing any probation, so how can I do a no contact order?
Judge, I think with the 6 months of post-release, same action, even though there is no likelihood of those 6 months ever being imposed, they are suspended on the condition as required by statute. This condition would operate similarly.
But that would only work for those sentences, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, I can't order him no contact if I'm giving him life in prison.
Understood, Judge. I'm making the request.
All right, I just
Thank you.
deny that request. Thank you. All right, Mr. Banfield, you have the right to appeal a decision of this court. You must note your appeal within 30 days of the final order of this case. It is my understanding that Mr. Carroll will not represent you on appeal. Is that correct, Mr. Carroll? All right. So, sir, Mr. Banfield, do you wish to hire your own attorney or have the court appoint you an attorney?
Hasn't been decided.
I'll go ahead and appoint an attorney for you now. If later on you decide to hire your own attorney, you can do that. Okay, sir?
Sure.
All right. Since Mr. Carroll told me of his intentions in advance, my clerk was able to find an appellate court-appointed attorney who is willing and able to take your case. So the court appoints Brandon Sloan as your appellate attorney. The court ordered transcripts of the trial back in May, so those should be available now for your attorney to review. So there should be no delay in your appeal, okay? Mr. Sloan, I'm sure will come see you in the next few days. All right, sir?
Yes.
All right, is there anything further in this matter? All right, you're a man of the custody of the sheriff. Thank you. And Ms. Gill, I'm going to take a 10-minute recess and I'll come back and finish the rest of the sentencing docket, okay? All right, anything further, Ms. Sands? No? All right, court will be in recess.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it. Is everybody ready? Everybody set up? Okay, fantastic. Thank you all for being here. Today was the end of a long 3-year journey. We were able to, at conviction and now at sentencing, really get justice for Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. And I think what you saw today was the only appropriate sentence in this case, which is that Brendan Banfield is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. That's what we sought after when we brought these charges. We thought that was the appropriate sentence. That's what he got. I mean, you were all in the courtroom. I think it is what happened today really showed Brendan Banfield is a remorseless killer. Even today, he tried to make himself out to be the victim in this case. And that's why we think the sentence that he got today, life in prison, no possibility of parole, no possibility of sentencing credits, is the appropriate outcome. Who has questions?
How do you describe someone like that?
You know, he thought he could create the perfect crime. He thought he was smarter than everybody else. And it proved, you know, through trial and the hard work of the police department, through the hard work of our prosecution team, that he wasn't. And, you know, quite frankly, he's an evil guy. This was an evil crime. And he thought he was smart enough to get away with it, and he just wasn't. Drew?
Yeah, the Chief Judge touched on it there, but this punishment 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you could have been sentenced to death. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that, the severity of this conviction and this punishment and its relationship to what Virginia abolished some years ago?
Yes, of course, Virginia a few years ago was a death penalty state. It no longer is, but it still has the aggravated murder charge, which is what we charged Brendan Banfield under. We brought that charge because aggravated murder, regardless of whether it was a death penalty case or whether it was mandatory life in prison, is the most severe charge in our statute code book. It's the most severe charge you can bring in Virginia. And this was a case where the most severe charge was warranted, because I will tell you, I have been doing this job for a while. I've been a prosecutor for a long time. I haven't seen a crime like this. Chief Judge Escarati mentioned that this is a crime that rises to the top in her in terms of her career, in terms of severity and evilness. So the fact that we brought these aggravated murder charges, to us, it was necessary because that was the only charge that reflected the seriousness, the deviousness of this crime.
Were you surprised by Brendan's statement there?
You know, I can't say I was surprised. You know, I think it was part and parcel with how he testified at trial. I think that same character that you saw when he took the stand in his own defense a few months ago came out again here today. A guy who pointed a finger at everybody other than himself. A guy who tried to outsmart the system. But in the final analysis, he did what he did. He was convicted. Now he has to pay.
Steve, how were the families who heard him still blaming Joseph and Christine after the hearing? What did they share with you about their reaction to that?
Well, Jenna, do you have anything that you want to share?
Sure.
Yeah.
The families have been through so much. They really struggled with the ins and outs of the motions that preceded the trial. They sat through weeks of testimony where their family members were slandered, to be completely honest. So today they found closure, and I think they were at peace, but with so long a haul to get to this point, there was no explosion of emotion, if that answers your question. There was no final breath of relief. They've been through a lot, and they've been through it all, and I think they're ready to move on.
More anger that he's still telling that story?
No, they're not surprised by anything with this man. There was nothing that he has done at any point in this process that made sense or that showed the remorse that they expected to be shown. So no, today was just more Brendan Banfield being Brendan Banfield.
And I think to Jenna's point, we see that in these types of cases. The process is long, and victims of crimes like this suffer so much that, you know, oftentimes a conviction or even a severe sentence can never make these individuals whole, right? You know, we do our best to do justice, but the only true justice would be if Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan were still among us today. So I always feel that for victims of crimes like these, the journey towards healing is long, but we hope that this is another step in that, because these folks were wrong. They went through so much, and they deserve to be able to heal.
Can I ask one more thing? You, Jenna or Steve? At the end, you were asking for no contact
Yeah.
with the daughter. The judge seemed to think, well, he's going to be in for prison for life. Did you not want him being able to write her or her to go visit him?
That was actually a request from the victim's family. And quite frankly, they had been through so much that we wanted to ask, that we wanted to at least ask the judge for something that would help give them closure. We're not surprised by the judge's ruling, but we felt that it was only right to ask.
And was that what you were asking for, that he not write
Yes.
at any point, now or? Yeah.
Yes, I think the family wants Brendan's daughter to be able to grow up as normally as possible. Obviously, this is a abnormal situation, but she's a young girl who has her whole life ahead of her, and she has people that are around her that care about her, and they just want to give her the best opportunity to heal and continue on with her life.
Is she still living with his family, though?
Well, I don't want to get too much into the. I don't want to get too much into the custody battle. I'd like to keep it to the criminal charge, because, quite frankly, I don't want to step into a family drama that could be painful, particularly when the person at issue is, quite frankly, a little girl.
Can you speak to the next step? Sounds like he's going to appeal.
Of course. We're not surprised that he would appeal. As a matter of fact, pretty much any case like this has an appeal. What'll happen is he has his time to appeal. Appellate counsel was assigned, and the Attorney General's office will be handling criminal appeals as per Virginia code. But quite frankly, you all saw the case. You all saw the evidence. We feel confident that the police did a wonderful investigation, that we put forward a very, very strong case. We already heard yesterday the defense make these arguments to overturn the conviction. They were rejected roundly by the judge, and we expect to prevail at appeal as well.
Are there sometimes disputes within an investigation of what the evidence actually shows and proves? So is this not uncommon?
Well, to be honest, I think in this case, a lot of that was really blown out of proportion. I think what you have typically, as somebody who obviously has been involved in a lot of investigations, is you start wide, and as you get more things, you're testing theories, right? So essentially, it is not that there were disagreements. It's just that as you get forward, as more doors close, you hone in. But the last thing that anybody wants a police department to do or prosecutors to do is immediately hone in on one theory before all the evidence is in, right? So I think what happened in this case is normal investigatory procedure tried to get blown out of proportion as part of a defense strategy, which, fair play to them. When you're a defense attorney and you're on trial, you're doing everything that you can for your client, who is the defendant. But what we saw here is what you would see in any big high profile case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I may ask
Yeah.
an unrelated question, just your response to the congressional letter being sent to your office.
Yeah, it is. I got to tell you, it is amazing to me that Congress doesn't have anything better to do than harass the people in charge of the justice system of the country's safest large jurisdiction, bar none. And quite frankly, let's be honest, this isn't even about my office or Fairfax County. This committee, if you've taken a look at what they've done over the last month or so, they have sent these letters and tried to harass the leaders of justice systems all around cities and counties that are led by Democrats. In my view, it's because there's a election coming up in a couple of months, and Republicans on that congressional committee, they think that they're going to save their majority by trying to stir up panic about immigrants and about crime. But I will tell you this: if the members of those committee, the House Judiciary Committee, if the Republican members of that committee actually cared about public safety, they would let local prosecutors, local police, local sheriffs, local judges do their job and not have to waste time responding to political nonsense from DC. That's what I think of that letter. Anything else? All right, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, you too.
Step on by.
Yeah, right.
Is this yours?
Yeah, the blue one.
Is a clamp yours too?
Clamp is mine.